The subway car lurched forward, packed tight with the Monday morning crowd. Darius Mitchell stood near the center, one hand gripping the overhead rail, the other holding his daughter's small fingers. 7-year-old Amara, a warm, brown-skinned girl with tight coils pulled back in a neat puff, pressed close to his leg as strangers swayed around them. The doors opened and a woman stepped aboard. She wore a simple gray coat, nothing that announced wealth, but there was something in the way she carried herself. Her eyes were sharp but tired. No one offered her a seat. Darius looked at Amara, then at the woman. Without a word, he rose and guided his daughter up with him. The woman paused. Their eyes met. She sat down. The train rolled on. No one knew that the woman was worth more than $3 billion. Victoria Ashford had not taken the subway in 15 years. This morning, her driver called in sick, her backup was stuck in traffic, and she had a board meeting that could not wait. So she did what she used to do in her 20s, walked to the nearest station and swiped a Metro card she kept for emergencies. She had forgotten how exhausting it was to be invisible. In her world, people moved when she entered a room. Assistants anticipated her needs before she voiced them. Security cleared paths through crowds, but here, underground, she was just another tired face among strangers. No one cared about her quarterly projections or acquisition strategy. No one knew that her signature could create or destroy thousands of jobs with a single stroke, and no one had offered her a seat until him. Victoria watched the man, now the way he positioned himself between his daughter and the press of bodies near the door. The child was small for her age, with dark brown skin and a cloud of natural hair, as if her father had styled it himself this morning. She clutched a purple backpack decorated with cartoon dinosaurs, her sneakers scuffed at the toes. The man bent down and said something to her, words lost in the noise. The girl nodded, and he adjusted her jacket collar with dark brown fingers that looked rough from work. There was no impatience in his movements, no frustration at having given up his seat, just the quiet attention of someone who had learned to put another person first. Victoria had seen many kinds of men in her career. Men who took what they wanted without asking. Men who smiled while they lied. Men who measured their worth in corner offices and country club memberships. But she rarely encountered men who gave things away, especially small things, things no one would notice or reward. She studied his face in the moments when he was not looking. Early 30s maybe. Handsome in an unpolished way, with tired eyes and a jaw that had not seen a razor in at least 2 days. His clothes were clean but old, a flannel shirt beneath a canvas jacket, jeans faded at the knees. He did not look poor exactly. He looked like someone who had learned to survive on less. A thoughtful, capable black man navigating a system built to overlook him. The train slowed for the next stop and more passengers pushed toward the doors. The man placed his calloused hand on his daughter's shoulder, steadying her as the car swayed. She looked up at him with complete trust, the kind that only children can give. Victoria realized she was staring and turned her gaze to the window. The tunnel walls flashed by in the darkness, and she caught her own reflection. A woman of 52 who had built a company from nothing, who had fought her way into boardrooms where no one wanted her. And yet she had not thought twice about sitting down when a stranger offered his seat. She had simply accepted as if kindness from strangers was something she deserved. The train reached her stop. Before stepping onto the platform, she glanced back. The man was helping his daughter through the crowd, his hand on her back. He did not look for thanks. Victoria stopped at the top of the stairs and watched until she saw them emerge from a different exit. 2 figures disappearing into the city that would never know their names. Something about that moment stayed with her. Not the seat itself, but the way he had stood without hesitation, as if giving was simply what he did. Darius Mitchell had been a project manager once, not a particularly impressive one. No corner office, no executive title, but steady, reliable, the kind of employee who showed up early and stayed late, who never missed a deadline, who quietly kept things running while others took the credit. That was before Nia died. 3 years ago, his wife had been driving home from her sister's house when a delivery truck ran a red light on Route 9. The driver had been awake for 22 hours, pushing to meet a deadline that some dispatcher had set without thinking about consequences. Nia never saw him coming. The doctor said she was gone before the ambulance arrived. Darius had been at home with Amara watching cartoons and waiting for her mother to walk through the door. In the months that followed, everything fell apart slowly. Then, all at once, he took bereavement leave, then extended leave. Then found himself sitting across from his supervisor explaining that he could not travel anymore, could not work weekends anymore, could not stay past 5 when his daughter needed him home. The company was understanding at first, then they were patient, then they were practical. When a promotion opened up a position Darius had been working toward for years, they gave it to someone else. Someone without complications, someone who could commit fully. Darius did not fight it. He accepted a demotion, then a transfer, then a layoff package when the company restructured his entire department. He told himself it was fine. He told himself Amara mattered more than any title or salary. But the world did not reward sacrifice. It rewarded presence and ambition. He found work as a maintenance technician at an office building in Midtown, fixing pipes, replacing light bulbs, keeping the systems running for people who never noticed him unless something broke. The pay was enough to cover rent on their one-bedroom apartment in Queens, enough for groceries and school supplies, and the occasional treat when Amara had been especially good. Not enough for savings, not enough for emergencies. Nia's parents had offered to help. Once they had sat in his living room with their lawyer, beneath a framed photo of their beautiful black family, and explained that they were worried about Amara's welfare, that they had resources Darius did not, that they only wanted what was best for their granddaughter. Darius had listened politely. Then he had asked them to leave. They had never approved of him, never thought he was good enough for their daughter, never understood why Nia had chosen a man without ambition or connections. After the funeral, their disapproval hardened into something colder. They saw him as an obstacle now, a barrier between themselves and the only piece of Nia they had left. Darius did not hate them for it. He understood grief, understood how it could twist love into something possessive. But he would not let them take his daughter. Amara was all he had. So he worked. He scraped by. He learned to cut his own hair and pack lunches that were nutritious but cheap. He learned which thrift stores had the best children's clothes and which library branches stayed open latest. He learned to say no to himself so he could say yes to her. And every morning, no matter how tired he was, he walked her to school. He combed her natural curls badly, but with love. He told her she was brave and kind and that her mother would be proud. The morning Victoria Ashford sat in his seat, Darius had been awake since 4:30. The radiator in their apartment had broken again, and he had spent 2 hours fixing it before Amara woke up. His coffee had gone cold on the counter, forgotten. But when he saw a tired woman standing alone in a crowded train, he did not think about any of that. He just stood up. It was what Nia would have done. Later that morning, Victoria sat in her corner office, watching the city spread out below her. The board meeting had gone well. Another acquisition approved. Her CFO had praised her instincts. She did not feel brilliant. She felt tired. Somewhere out there, the man from the subway was going about his day, fixing something, probably taking care of his daughter, living a life that had nothing to do with shareholder value or market position, and yet he had given her something she could not buy. Amara asked the question on the walk to school, 3 blocks from the subway exit. The morning was cold, and she had pulled her hood up over her puff. "Daddy, why do you always give your seat away?" Darius slowed his pace to match hers. He had not realized she noticed things like that, the small surrenders he made every day without thinking. He had underestimated her, as parents often do. "Because some people carry more than they show," he said. Amara considered this for half a block, her forehead creased in concentration. "Like invisible backpacks?" Darius smiled. "Something like that." "How do you know who has one?" "You do not always know. That is the point. You just try to help when you can and hope it lands where it is needed." Amara nodded slowly. "Mom used to do that too. Give things away, I mean." Darius felt the familiar ache behind his ribs. "Yes, she did. I remember." Amara's voice was matter-of-fact, but her hand tightened around his. "She gave her umbrella to that lady outside the grocery store." The one who was crying, Darius remembered. It had been raining hard, and Nia had spotted a woman standing under the awning, sobbing into her phone. She had walked over without hesitation, handed over their only umbrella, and come back soaking wet. When Darius asked why, she had just shrugged. She needed it more than we did. That was Naya, always giving, always seeing. Your mom believed that everyone deserves a little grace, Darius said. Even strangers, especially strangers. What is grace? It is giving someone something good when they have not earned it, when they cannot pay you back just because you want to. They reached the school gates. Darius knelt to zip Amara's jacket higher against the wind. Other parents were arriving now, expensive cars pulling up to the curb. Have a good day, sweetheart. I will pick you up at 3. Amara hugged him quick and fierce. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, more than all the stars. He watched her run toward the entrance dot. Then he turned back toward the subway, toward another day of broken pipes and fluorescent lights. But something felt different this morning. Lighter. He had given a stranger his seat. His daughter had noticed, and in noticing, she had reminded him why he did it. Not for reward, not for recognition, for the person Nia had believed he could be. 20 blocks south and 47 floors up, Victoria was thinking about the same moment. She had not been able to concentrate all morning. The acquisition paperwork sat unsigned on her desk. Her assistant had started asking if she was feeling well. Victoria stood at her window watching the grid of streets below. Somewhere down there, the man from the subway was living his life, a life she knew nothing about, a life that had intersected with hers for exactly 3 stops and would probably never intersect again. And yet his words echoed in her mind. Even though she had not heard them clearly, she had seen the shape of them on his lips. Some people carry more than they show. Such a simple idea, such ordinary kindness. But Victoria had not received ordinary kindness in so long that she had forgotten what it felt like. In her world, people helped each other for reasons. They made introductions because they wanted connections. They offered advice because they wanted influence. They showed generosity because they wanted leverage. Everything was a calculation, a strategy, a move in an endless game of acquisition and defense. But that man, he had given up his seat for no reason at all. He had not known who she was. He had not expected anything in return. He had simply seen someone who might need to sit down, and he had stood up. Victoria tried to remember the last time someone had done something for her without wanting something back. She could not. She thought about her childhood, before the company, before the wealth. Her father had been a factory worker, her mother a secretary at a real estate office. They had lived in a small house in a small town in Ohio, and every Sunday her father had mowed the lawn of their elderly neighbor because she could not afford to pay someone. You help people because it is right, he used to say, not because it pays. Victoria had believed that once. She had built her company on that principle, at least in the beginning, the idea that good products and fair treatment would be rewarded. But somewhere along the way, the principle had gotten lost, buried under spreadsheets and shareholder meetings and the relentless pressure to grow. Now she ran a corporation that employed 12,000 people across 3 continents. She made decisions every day that affected lives she would never see, and she had stopped thinking about whether those decisions were kind. She only thought about whether they were efficient. The man on the subway had reminded her of something she had forgotten. Power was not just about what you could take. It was about what you chose to give. Victoria turned away from the window and pressed the intercom. Cancel my afternoon, she said. All of it. Her assistant's voice came back carefully neutral. The interviews, ma'am? Reschedule them. And the calls. Should I tell them you are unwell? Victoria paused. Tell them I am thinking. She released the button and sat down at her desk. She had work to do. Important work that would affect thousands of people. But first, she needed to remember why she was doing it, and whether the woman she had become was the woman she wanted to be. 2 weeks later, Victoria found him again. Not intentionally, or at least that was what she told herself. She had started taking the subway once a week, always on different days, different lines, different times. She told her assistant it was market research, a way to stay connected to real people. And that was partly true, but she was also looking. She did not find him on the train. She found him at a community center in Chelsea, 3 blocks from a development site her company owned. Victoria had come to inspect the property before a scheduled demolition. A routine visit, nothing unusual. But on her way out, she passed a glass-walled room where children were gathered in a circle, and she saw him. He was sitting on a low chair, a picture book open in his lap, reading aloud to a group of about 15 kids. His daughter sat in the front row, watching him with the focused attention of a child who had heard this story 100 times, but still loved every word. Victoria stopped. Victoria, the story was something about a rabbit who lost his way home. The man read with different voices for each character, gruff for the badger, squeaky for the mouse, wise and slow for the owl. The children laughed at his exaggerated expressions. One little boy shouted out a guess about what would happen next, and the man paused to let him speak, nodding seriously as if the child's opinion mattered. Victoria watched for a long time, long enough for her security detail to get nervous, long enough to see the story end, to see the children applaud, to see the man gather his daughter in his arms and whisper something that made her giggle. He looked different here than he had on the subway. Lighter, less tired, as if this room, these children, were the place where he could finally breathe. Victoria waited until the group dispersed, then approached. That was beautiful. The man turned. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the gray starting at his temples. He looked at her without recognition, which was a relief. She had not wanted him to know who she was. "Thank you," he said. "It is a volunteer thing. Tuesdays and Thursdays when my schedule allows." "Your daughter is lovely." He glanced at Amara, who was helping stack chairs in the corner. "She is everything." Victoria nodded, unsure what to say next. She was not good at small talk. Decades of boardrooms had trained it out of her. "What is your name?" she asked. "Darius. Darius Mitchell." He extended his hand and she shook it. His grip was firm but not aggressive. "I am Victoria." She did not offer her last name. He did not ask. Amara appeared at his side, tugging his sleeve. "Daddy, can we get hot chocolate? The place on the corner has the good kind." Darius looked down at her, then back at Victoria. "I should go. It was nice to meet you." "You too." She watched them leave hand in hand, disappearing into the ordinary afternoon. Darius Mitchell was exactly the kind of person she had spent 30 years forgetting existed. Kind without reason, generous without calculation. Walking back to her car, her mind already worked through possibilities. A job opening at one of her subsidiaries, a scholarship for his daughter, a check from an anonymous foundation. But even as she planned, something nagged at her. He had not asked for help, he had not complained, he had not looked at her like someone who wanted to be saved. And she was beginning to realize that saving people who had not asked was not kindness. It was just another kind of control. The third time was her fault, and it nearly ruined everything. Victoria had done her research quietly through channels that could not be traced. She knew now that Darius Mitchell worked as a maintenance technician at a building in Midtown. She knew about his wife, the accident, the way his career had stalled in the years since. She knew about the in-laws who circled like wolves waiting for him to fail. She knew that his daughter's school would be raising tuition next year and that the increase would be more than he could afford. So she acted. The scholarship committee received an anonymous donation, earmarked specifically for existing students who demonstrated financial need. The paperwork was clean, the trail untraceable. Darius would never know where the money came from. He would simply receive a letter explaining that Amara's tuition had been covered for the next 3 years. It was elegant, efficient, the kind of help that could not be refused because it could not be identified. Victoria felt good about it for exactly 1 week. Then she saw him again. She had come to the community center deliberately this time, telling herself she wanted to see the children's reading program expand. But when she entered, Darius was already there, and he was waiting for her. "I know who you are," he said. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. Victoria felt something she had not felt in years. Genuine surprise. "The scholarship," Darius continued. "Amara's tuition. I made some calls, asked some questions. It took a while, but I figured it out." Victoria considered lying. It was her instinct. Deflect, redirect, maintain control, but something in his face stopped her. "I wanted to help," she said. "Why?" "Because you gave me your seat on the subway 3 weeks ago." Darius stared at her. "That is why. Because I gave you a seat on the train." "I know it sounds absurd. It sounds like pity." His jaw tightened. It sounds like you saw some sad single father struggling to hold it together, and you decided to swoop in and make yourself feel good. That is not. I do not need to be saved, Victoria. My daughter does not need a benefactor. We were doing fine. The words hit harder than any boardroom criticism she had ever received, because they were true. She had not asked what he needed. She had not considered whether he wanted help. She had simply decided, the way she decided everything, from a position of power, with her own judgment as the final authority. I apologize, Victoria said, and meant it. Darius was silent for a long moment. Children's laughter drifted from the next room, muffled by the closed door. You know what the hardest part of losing Nia was, he said finally. It was not the grief. It was the way people treated me after, like my life was some kind of tragedy that they could feel good about helping with. He looked at her directly, and Victoria saw something. She recognized the exhaustion of being a capable black man who was only seen as a stereotype of struggle. I am not a charity case, Darius said. I am a father doing the best he can, and the best thing people can do for me is treat me like I am capable of handling my own life. Victoria nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because from where I am standing, it looks like you do not know how to interact with people without trying to control them. The accusation landed like a blow, accurate, unavoidable. Victoria Ashford had built an empire on her ability to see problems and fix them. It was her greatest strength. But standing in this fluorescent-lit community center, facing a man who wanted nothing from her, she realized it might also be her greatest flaw. You are right, she said. I do not know another way. It is how I have survived. Darius studied her, and some of the hardness in his eyes softened. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something like recognition. Then maybe you should learn one, he said, because throwing money at people is not helping. It is just making yourself feel powerful. He turned and walked toward the reading room where Amara was waiting. At the door, he paused. The scholarship stays, he said without looking back. Amara earned it, even if you bought it. But we are done here. I do not want to see you again. The door closed behind him. Victoria stood alone in the hallway, surrounded by children's artwork taped to cinderblock walls, and felt something she had not felt in decades. Shame. Real, earned shame. She had tried to help, and she had made it worse. She had tried to give, and she had only taken his dignity, his agency, his right to face his own challenges on his own terms. It was the most expensive lesson she had ever learned. Victoria did not see Darius for almost 2 months. She went back to her life, the meetings, the acquisitions, the endless machinery of wealth. But something had shifted. She found herself questioning decisions she would have made automatically before, asking her team whether they had considered the human cost, not just the financial benefit. Listening more, directing less. Her COO noticed, her board noticed. They whispered about whether she was losing her edge, going soft in her old age. Victoria did not care. She was not going soft. She was going somewhere else entirely, somewhere she had left behind a long time ago, in a small house in Ohio where her father mowed a neighbor's lawn for free. When she finally reached out to Darius again, she did it differently. No anonymous donations, no hidden strings, just a handwritten letter delivered to his apartment by regular mail. She wrote about her father, the factory worker who believed in helping because it was right. She wrote about how she had lost that belief somewhere along the way. She wrote about how seeing him on the subway had reminded her of something she had forgotten. And then she made an offer, not charity, not a gift, a job. Her company was launching a new initiative, a community outreach program designed to identify and support working families in underserved neighborhoods. They needed someone to run it, someone who understood what those families actually needed, not what executives in corner offices assumed they needed. The salary was fair, the hours were flexible enough for a single parent, and the position reported directly to her, which meant no one could interfere with it. She was not trying to save him. She was trying to give him a chance to help others. The letter ended with a single line. This is not about what you can do for me. It is about what we might do together, if you are willing. She did not expect a response. She had prepared herself for silence, for rejection, for the possibility that she had burned this bridge beyond repair. 3 weeks later, Darius Mitchell walked into her office. He looked the same. Tired eyes, rough hands, the quiet dignity of someone who had nothing to prove. But there was something different, too. A curiosity, maybe an openness that had not been there before. "I read your letter," he said. Victoria gestured to the chair across from her desk. And I think you are not the person I thought you were." He sat down. "Or maybe you are, and you are trying to become someone else. Is that a problem? I do not know yet." He paused. "My daughter asked me why I was so angry after we last spoke. I told her it was because someone had tried to help without asking first. She said maybe they just did not know how to ask." Victoria felt something ease in her chest. "Your daughter sounds wise." "She is 7, but she pays attention." Darius met her eyes. "I have some conditions." "Name them." "I will not be a token. I will not sit in meetings and smile while executives pretend to care about poor people. If I take this job, I do it my way, on the ground with real families and making real decisions." "Agreed." "And I do not report to you. Not directly. I need to be able to tell you when you are wrong without worrying about my paycheck." Victoria considered this. It went against every instinct she had, but that was precisely the point. "Agreed. You will report to the head of community relations. I will have no direct authority over your position." Darius studied her for a long moment. "Why are you doing this? Really, not the official answer, the real one." Victoria thought about the question, about the seat on the subway, about her father's lawnmower and her mother's practical kindness. "Because some people carry more than they show," she said, "and I have been carrying something for a long time. I think it is time to set it down." Darius was silent, then slowly he nodded. "Okay," he said, "I am in." They shook hands across the desk, not as savior and saved, not as powerful and powerless, but as two people who had recognized something true in each other. The first year was hard. Darius learned the language of corporate philanthropy, the grants and metrics, the stakeholder meetings and impact assessments. He hated most of it. The jargon felt like a barrier, a way for wealthy people to discuss poverty without ever touching it. But he also saw what resources could do when applied correctly. He saw families get housing assistance that kept them off the streets. He saw children access tutoring programs that changed their trajectories. He saw single mothers find jobs that paid enough to actually live on, not just survive. And slowly he began to trust that this was real. That Victoria Ashford's company was not just performing compassion for public relations, but actually trying to make a difference. He still did not fully trust Victoria herself. She was too polished, too controlled. In meetings, she spoke with the precision of someone who had calculated every word. In conversations, she revealed nothing personal, but he noticed things. The way she stayed late to read his reports, actually read them, not just skim for highlights. The way she pushed back against her own board when they tried to cut the community program's budget. The way she asked questions about the families he worked with, not their statistics, but their stories. She was learning, changing maybe, or remembering who she used to be. One evening, about 14 months after Darius started, Victoria called him to her office. It was late, nearly 8, and the building was mostly empty. Amara was at a sleepover, so Darius had nowhere to be. "I wanted to show you something," Victoria said. She handed him a folder. Inside was a proposal, a new initiative larger than anything they had attempted before, a network of community centers across the city offering childcare, job training, and family support services. The budget was substantial, the timeline aggressive. "This is ambitious," Darius said. "Too ambitious, maybe." He flipped through the pages. "You would need local partners, community buy-in. You cannot just build these things and expect people to come." "I know. That is why I need you to lead it." Darius looked up. "What? You have spent a year learning how we work. Now, I want you to teach us how you work. Build this program the way you think it should be built, from the ground up." "Victoria, this is a multi-million-dollar initiative. I am a former maintenance technician with no business degree. And I am a factory worker's daughter who built a $3 billion company. Credentials are less important than character." She leaned forward. "I have watched you, Darius, the way you listen, the way you treat people. You see things that MBAs miss. I am betting on that. Darius was quiet for a long moment. Through the window behind Victoria, the city glittered and hummed. Why me? He asked finally. Really? Not the official answer, the real one. Victoria was silent. For a moment, Darius thought she would deflect. Then she spoke. Because you gave up your seat. And when I sat down, I felt like a person. Not a CEO, not a billionaire, not a problem to be managed. Just a tired woman who needed to rest. She looked at him directly. I have spent 30 years making people feel small so I could feel powerful. You made me feel human in 30 seconds. I want to learn how to do that. And I think you are the only person who can teach me. Darius did not know what to say. Okay, he said finally, but I have one more condition. We do this together, not you funding from above and me building from below. We work side by side. You come to the communities, you meet the families, you see what this actually looks like. Victoria hesitated. Agreed, she said. And for the first time, Darius saw something in her eyes that looked like hope. 2 years passed. The community centers opened one by one in neighborhoods across the city. They were not perfect. Nothing built by humans ever was, but they were real. They had after-school programs and job fairs. They had counseling services and legal aid. They had reading rooms where volunteers came twice a week to share stories with children who needed them. Darius ran the whole thing, not from a corner office, but from a folding table in whatever center needed him most that week. He knew every staff member by name. He knew which families were struggling and which were starting to thrive. And through it all, Victoria kept her promise. She came to ribbon cuttings and community meetings. She sat in plastic chairs and listened to parents describe their fears and hopes. She learned names she would never have known otherwise. Not executives or investors, but single mothers and immigrant fathers and teenagers trying to find their way. It changed her. Not dramatically, not overnight, but steadily. Like water smoothing stone, she became less guarded, less controlled. She started asking her staff how they were feeling, not just what they were accomplishing. She started leaving work at reasonable hours. Her board worried. Analysts wrote articles about whether Victoria Ashford was losing her touch. She didn't care because for the first time in decades, she was not just building something profitable, she was building something good. One autumn evening, Victoria came to the Chelsea Community Center for a volunteer appreciation event. Darius was there with Amara, who was 10 now, tall for her age and fierce in her opinions. She had become a regular at the center, helping with younger kids, organizing book drives. Victoria watched them from across the room. The way Darius laughed at something Amara said. The way Amara looked up at him with absolute trust. The same look she had seen on a crowded subway train 3 years ago. Darius caught her watching and walked over. "Thank you for coming," he said. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the room fill with people. "Do you remember what you said in your letter?" Victoria asked. "About carrying more than you show?" "Amara asked me about that once." "What did you tell her?" "That everyone has something heavy. Some people carry it on the outside where you can see it. Most people carry it on the inside where no one looks." He paused. "The trick is to be kind anyway, because you never know which kind you are dealing with." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "I carried something for a long time," she said. "The weight of being powerful. It sounds ridiculous. I know, but it was heavy. I could not put it down because I thought it was holding me up. And now I think I was wrong. It was not holding me up. It was holding me back." Darius looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, Victoria did not feel the need to hide. "You are different than you were," he said. "Is that good?" "I think so." He smiled slightly. "You are still terrifying, but in a better way." Victoria laughed, a real laugh, unguarded and warm. She had not saved him. She had not fixed him. She had simply made space for him to do what he did best. And in doing so, he had made space for her to become someone new. It was not a transaction. It was not a strategy. It was just two people helping each other carry the weight. On a Tuesday morning in late October, 3 years after it all began, Darius Mitchell took the subway to work. He sat in a window seat, watching the tunnel lights flash by. The train was crowded, but not packed. Amara was in school, probably already deep in her reading assignment. The doors opened at 53rd Street and a young man stepped aboard. He was maybe 25, with the tired eyes of someone who had worked a night shift. His clothes were clean but worn. The only empty seat was next to Darius. The young man hesitated, looking around for another option. Finding none, he moved toward the seat, then stopped. An older woman had just boarded. She was heavy-set, breathing hard from the stairs, clutching a shopping bag that looked too heavy for her arms. The young man looked at the seat, looked at the woman, then he stepped aside and gestured for her to sit. "Please," he said, "you look like you need it more than me." The woman blinked in surprise, then smiled, a genuine smile that softened her whole face. "Thank you, honey," she said. "That is very kind." She sat down with a sigh of relief. The young man moved to stand by the door. Darius watched the whole thing. It was a small moment, ordinary, the kind of thing that happened on subways everywhere, or did not happen depending on who was paying attention. But Darius felt something shift in his chest, a warmth. This was what it looked like. Not grand gestures or foundation grants, just a stranger standing up so another stranger could sit down. The train slowed for the next stop and Marcus saw her. Victoria stood near the far doors, dressed in her usual gray coat, watching the same scene he had just witnessed. Their eyes met across the crowded car, not with surprise, not with expectation, just recognition. She did not wave. He did not nod. They simply saw each other, acknowledged what they had seen, and let the moment pass. The doors opened. Victoria stepped off onto the platform, disappearing into the flow of commuters. Darius stayed on until his stop, then walked the familiar route to the community center. The autumn air was crisp, and the trees along the avenue were turning gold. He thought about Naya, about the umbrella she had given away on a rainy afternoon, about the way she had believed that kindness was not a resource to be hoarded, but a current to be joined. He thought about Amara, growing up strong and kind in a world that did not always reward either. He thought about Victoria, the billionaire who had learned to set down her power so she could pick up something better. And he thought about the young man on the train, standing by the door with his tired eyes, who had chosen to give something away that he could barely afford to spare. That was the point. It was never about what you could afford to give. It was about what you chose to give anyway. Darius walked into the community center, poured himself a cup of coffee, sat down at his folding table, and got to work. Outside, the city hummed with 10 million lives, and somewhere in that current, in a subway car, on a crowded street, in a corner office high above the noise, someone was standing up so someone else could sit down. That was the thing about kindness. It did not solve everything. It did not fix the broken systems or heal the deep wounds or make the world suddenly fair. But it moved from person to person, moment to moment, one small choice at a time. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes that movement was enough to change a life or two or more than anyone could.